Good evening. A couple weeks ago, Brenna, Elwood, and we were driving back from Disney World, and it was a little bit later than we had anticipated. And we were tired. We had a fun day at the parks, but as anyone who has ever drug a 2-year-old around Disney World would know, at the end of the day, you really, really want to go home. And so we're driving, it's later than we want it to be, it's dark out, and we make this last-minute decision. And I mean, cut across 4 empty lanes of highway last-minute decision to stop at the Fort Drum Service Plaza. It wasn't planned. It meant it was going to add an extra 15 minutes to our ETA, but also coffee and chips and stretching your legs and a bathroom break didn't sound that bad. So we stopped, and neither of us thought anything of it. It was 15 minutes to the drive that was already too long. What did it matter? The thing we didn't know was at about 15 minutes up the road as we were getting ready to leave, a car going north on the turnpike blew a tire, which launched it over the median, which caused it to collide with another vehicle that then spun out and slammed into the side of a semi-truck. Traffic backed up immediately, and our 15-minute bathroom break quickly became many, many hours of sitting there in traffic doing nothing. And as we sat there waiting for state troopers to come and tell us if we legally can turn around and drive the wrong way on the highway to get off at the next exit, I couldn't help but to sit there and wonder and think about it. Did our last-minute stop, that split-second decision, that decision we thought nothing about, if we hadn't have done it, would we have made it past the accident in time and our trip would have gone as planned? Or did the Fort Drum Service Plaza save our lives? And I know there's no way of knowing what the outcome would have been. But I sat there and I realized that these small decisions that we make on the day-to-day, these things we choose to do, and we don't think anything about how these seemingly minuscule choices, they can have huge, unexpected impacts. So as we're here on our graduation Sunday night, and we often do a lesson addressed towards those graduates, and often we talk about the big choices that they're going to make in the future. And yes, graduates, you're going to have a lot of big choices that you're going to have to make, but I'll be honest with you. Most of the choices that you will make will seem small in the moment. Most of the choices that you will make, you won't think much about when you choose to do them. But the truth is, even those small choices, or those choices that we think of as small or minuscule or not important, often can have huge, unexpected, and sometimes eternal impacts. So tonight I want to look at several stories from the Bible. I want to look at several stories of men and women who made what they thought were small decisions, and how those small, in-the-moment decisions changed their lives forever. To start off, I want to look at the example of Lot. In Genesis 13, verses 10 and 11, it says, "And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well-watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other." And on the surface, I can imagine Lot thinking this is a small decision. He's out there with Abraham, his uncle, and he sees this lush, beautiful land. And he thinks to himself, it'd be nicer to live in a nice, beautiful area, places where the crops will grow, places where we don't have to travel from place to place to get somewhere of importance. So Lot chooses to move. And when he does, when he makes that small, not seemingly important choice, drawn in by this lush landscape, by this promise of wealth, when he chose the plains of Jordan near the city of Sodom, he made a decision that had eternal consequences. In Genesis 13:13, just two verses ahead, it says, "Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord." But Lot put that aside. Lot didn't think much of it. He said, "I know who God is. I know that this is the land that I want. So he moved there. And he made this choice where he was going to live based on this materialistic appeal. And as we know, that choice changed him and his family forever, and not in the best of ways. So our graduates, as you step forward into a world that is full of opportunity, a world that is full of choices, I want you to remember the story of Lot. When you make decisions, whether it be choosing a college or a job or a city to live in or the friends you hang out with, I want you to look beyond the immediate benefits. I want you to look beyond the immediate outcomes that are obvious and that you can see right in front of you. And I want you to take into consideration the long road. Down the road, what will this look like? Will this have a moral or spiritual impact on you? And will that impact be good or will it be negative? In Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12, it says, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but it ends is the way to death." So graduates, seek wisdom, seek guidance from God. Don't be lured by seeming prosperity. Don't be lured by seeing things that look good, that they'll make you feel good, that they're easy, that they're the choices that make life easy on you. When you make choices, no matter how small, ask yourself, will this enrich my faith or will it compromise it? Will it contribute to my character and my values or will it erode them? In a world that often values material wealth and instant gratification, I encourage you to make your decisions rooted in faith, to make your decisions, no matter how small, guided by God's word and directed towards his righteousness. I also want to think about the example of Moses, right? We all know Moses. Moses was one of the greatest leaders in the Bible. And yet, he was not immune to making small decisions with significant consequences. While leading the Israelites through the wilderness, they found themselves without water. And if you're familiar with the story of the Exodus at all, whenever the Israelites found themselves without something, they got a little fussy. So they started fussing. They started crying to Moses and Aaron, their leaders, started saying, "Give us water, have God provide for us, or we might as well turn around and go home." The line they used time and time again. So God gives Moses a simple instruction. In Numbers chapter 20, verse 8, it says, "Take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before the eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them, and give drink to the congregation and their cattle." However, in a moment of frustration perhaps, hearing the constant complaints of the Israelites nagging on his shoulder, Moses made a choice. And instead of simply speaking to the rock as God had told him, Moses struck the rock with his staff, and water did gush out. And the thirst of the people was quenched, and the animals had water to drink. But this seemingly small action, this split-second decision fueled by irritation, changed the outcome of Moses' entire journey. In Numbers chapter 20, verse 12, it reads, "And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me, to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them." This small decision, this in-the-moment frustration, cost Moses the privilege of entering the promised land with his fellow people. This whole purpose that he had been working up towards, this whole goal that he had in his mind, step after step, is gone because of a choice that seemed, at least in the moment, pretty small. So graduates, as you move forward into this next chapter of life, remember Moses. There are going to be times where you are frustrated. There are going to be times when you are angry. There are going to be times where things do not go as planned and when the people around you are going to be difficult. That's the nature of life. That's the nature of people. It's not going to change. But in these moments, how will you respond? Will you make decisions in anger? Or will you choose patience and faithfulness? When you're faced with stress and pressure, I encourage you to remember Moses, to remember the Lord, to remember his commandments, his principles, his promises, and to make your decisions based on the faith that you find in God and his promises through his word. Not make your decisions in the heat of the moment, or out of frustration, or out of anger, or to please the people who are nagging over your shoulder. I also think of tonight Ananias and Sapphira. Ananias and Sapphira, they're early members of the Christian community. And they made a decision too. They decided that they were going to sell a piece of land that they owned, and they were going to give the proceeds of that sale to the church. In Acts chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, it says, "But a man named Ananias with his wife Sapphira sold a piece of property, and with his wife's knowledge, he kept back for himself some of the proceeds and brought only part of it and laid it at the apostles' feet." And I think it's important to note that the sin here wasn't that they kept some of the money. God's never said you have to sell everything you own and give 100% of the profits to me, in a physical sense at least. But the problem was, Ananias and Sapphira went before the apostles' feet and they said, "We sold this piece of property and this is all the money. It's all yours," knowing that they had kept some for themselves. I'm just not doing as good as I said I did. And I can imagine how easy it is to make similar choices, to know that you are doing something good, but you want to make yourself feel good. You want to look good. You want to feel important. So you stretch the truth just a little bit. And yet we know it did not end well for Ananias and Sapphira when they made that decision. So graduates, again, I encourage you, as you step out into the world, as you graduate from high school and you move into college or the work field, you're going to have a lot of opportunities. That would take time. And yet we know, in Proverbs 11:3, it says, the intentionships both professionally and personally. Strive for honesty. Strive for transparency in everything that you do, no matter how small, no matter how minor, no matter how minuscule it might feel in the moment. Because a small lie might feel inconsequential, but it can destroy your character, can ruin your reputation, and it can put a blockage in the way of your relationship with God. And I understand that this is a graduation night, and we've spent the first portion so far focusing on how small decisions can have negative impacts. So I want to shift our focus a little bit. I want to look at how small decisions, small choices, can have good, positive, huge, unexpected impacts. And I want to start with the idea of Abraham. Genesis chapter 18. It records an extraordinary moment in Abraham's life. He's sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day, and he looked up and he saw 3 men standing nearby. So he hurries over to meet them. He bows low to the ground out of an act of respect and humility. And Abraham immediately, like that, offers them food and a chance to rest under the shade of the tree. Genesis chapter 18, verses 6 through 8. And Abraham went quickly into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quick, 3 seahs of fine flour needed to make cakes." And Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the young man who prepared it quickly. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate. Abraham didn't know who these men were. Abraham didn't know that there are anything more than weary travelers, people who have been traveling from city to city looking for a place to rest. He knew nothing about them. And yet he offered them hospitality. However, the truth was these weren't men at all. And because of Abraham's kindness, God reaffirmed his promise to him that Sarah would bear him a son despite her old age. And this son, Isaac, this promised son that Abraham and Sarah started to think was never going to actually happen, this son would be the start of the lineage through which all the nations of the earth would receive blessings. So graduates, I want to remind you once again, as you step into this new phase, this new chapter in life, that you remember Abraham, each and every day presents opportunities to show kindness, to show hospitality, to show the love of God. And these opportunities, these actions that we make may seem small, they may seem inconsequential, but the truth of the matter is that these are opportunities for us to both receive and to give great blessings on behalf of the Lord. Just as Abraham's hospitality led to the confirmation of God's promise, we too, through our actions, can be reminded of his promise to us. So as you make decisions, I ask that you always be guided by love, always be guided by compassion. The world that you are stepping into needs more kindness. It needs more compassion. It needs more of God's love. And your seemingly insignificant acts of kindness can create ripples that extend far beyond what you could ever see or imagine. Tonight, I also want to think for a moment just about Ruth. Ruth, we know, was a Moabite woman who was married to an Israelite man who, along with his brother and father, died while they were living in Moab. And after their deaths, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, decided to return to her people in Bethlehem. Naomi told her two daughters-in-law to go back to their families, hoping that they could find new husbands, have a better life, something more. However, Ruth made a simple decision. She decided to stay, Naomi. And in Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 and 17, we can read her beautiful pledge. But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." Ruth's choice to remain with Naomi was a decision grounded in love, a decision grounded in loyalty. And little did she know how this decision was going to change her life. Little did she know that as they returned to Bethlehem, she would meet Boaz, whom she would later marry, and that she would become the great-grandmother of King David, and therefore establishing herself as an important fixture in the lineage of Jesus. So graduates, once again, as you step out into the world, as you move on from high school, as you move into college and the workforce and life beyond what you've known so far, I remind you to remain loyal, to remain committed, and to love, because these are qualities that often, especially now, are overlooked in our society. And just like love and compassion, these are qualities that our world needs more of. And just like how Ruth's story shows that small decisions grounded in these qualities can lead to significant life-changing outcomes, I promise you, and I know this is true because the Bible tells us so, that if you live a life filled by these qualities, filled with the love of the Lord, with faithfulness to Him, and everything you do in your actions and in your words, you too will be led to significant life-changing outcomes. So remember, Ruth, remember that you'll meet many people. As you go out into the world along your journey, you're going to meet lots of different people, and some of them will be with you for just a short while, and others will be with you for a lifetime. But in all of your relationships, you need to remember to show loyalty, to show commitment, to show love guided through God, and always uphold your commitments, because God can use these relationships, and He often does use these relationships to work out His bigger plans. And in the moment, we have no idea that's what's happening. In the moment, we can't see it nor expect it. That's how He works. So to our graduates, I want to remind you that the choices that you make every single day matter, no matter how small they feel, no matter how insignificant they feel. They can have consequences or great, beautiful impacts, further than anything you could imagine. These decisions, big and small, leave an imprint on your life, your character, and your relationship with God. And as we've seen in the stories of Lot and Moses and Ananias and Sapphira, Abraham and Ruth, small choices, small decisions have profound impacts. And a decision made in haste or frustration or deceit can lead us away from the path that God has intended for us. All decisions made with faith and honesty and love and kindness and commitment can bring unexpected blessings and further God's kingdom. Graduation marks a significant milestone in your life. It's an important one, but it's not the only milestone you have. As you transition from this stage to the next, remember, with each milestone that you come across, each step in your journey along the way, to trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, and in all ways submit to him, and he therefore will make your path straight. So as you tread this new path, I invite you to deepen your commitment to God, to walk in obedience with his word, and strive to align every decision, big or small, with his will. I ask that you remember that God's wisdom is infinite and ours is not. His love is unfailing and ours will fail. And his grace is sufficient, and all we can do is try our best to imitate that. I ask that you seek his wisdom in every decision you make, every step that you take, that you remember that in every single choice that you will make, you will have an opportunity to glorify God, to be a blessing to others, to become the person that God wants each and every one of us to be. Graduates, I wish you the best. I am praying for you. I love you each individually. But also, I worry for you. We live in a scary world, and I'm not saying that like it's something new. We always have. But this is the world we live in, and we need more people who are like the people you are now. So that I ask, and I pray, that as you step into the world, you continue to be the people you are. You continue to focus on God, and you strive to make yourself a better version of who you think the best person is possible. Tonight we focus mostly on our graduates, but I think the lessons that we've looked over are important for each and every single one of us. I've not graduated from anything in quite some time, and yet I know, just like I know it's true for them, the decisions that I make on the daily often aren't big, life-changing decisions, or at least they don't feel like it in the moment. I know that the decisions I make on the daily are the ones that feel small, the people I talk to, how I choose to or choose not to greet my neighbor, how I interact with people in public, and how I choose to share my faith. Do I do it in a way that feels dismissive because I am busy and I am running late, or do I take the time to show that I care and that I am loyal? I think that's true for everyone. And I think it's true, and I think we all know it's true, that if we live by these characteristics set forth by God, set through the example of Jesus, the examples that we read about time and time again in the Bible, if we live through these, God is going to bless us greatly. He's promised to, and we know that he is faithful. He has never failed a promise yet. I find it extremely unlikely that any of us in this room are ever going to be the exception to that rule. But I also do know that those promises are only promised to those who have made the decision to become one with Christ, to be baptized, buried in his death, burial, and resurrection, to enter his family, his kingdom. So if anyone here tonight has not yet made that decision, if you've not yet chosen to commit your life to Christ, to be buried with him in water, death, burial, and resurrection, I invite you to do so. Or if anyone here today has not lived up to the standard set by God, that the small decisions that you make on the day-to-day do not reflect God and his character and who he is and who he wants you to be. If that's you and you need the prayers of the congregation, I invite you as well. Or if you are carrying a heavy burden and you need the support and love that only brothers and sisters can provide, we're here for you too. We know that there is power in prayer, and we know that we pray to a God who answers, to a God who listens, to a God who has promised us a life better than this. If there is anything that this local congregation here can do for you tonight,